John Marston, an orphan turned criminal turned family man, a character who from the very beginning was doomed. Throughout the story of Red Dead 1 and 2, the story of the games heavily follows John and focuses on him living as a criminal and trying to escape that lifestyle after realizing his wrongdoings. He is by far one of the most tragic protagonists in any video game out there, and in this video we will explore his upbringing and his fall. Just as a fair warning, this video will contain a lot of spoilers for both Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, so if you don't want any of that to be spoiled, I suggest you watch this video at a later date. But without further ado, let's get into it. John Marston was born in 1873 in the northern United States. His father was a drunk, illiterate Scottish immigrant, and his mother was a prostitute who died from giving birth. For the first 8 years of his life, he lived with his father, who would always tell tales of Scotland and how much he loved it there, although never living a day of his life there. John stated that,
To hear him talk about it, you'd imagine he only ever ate haggis and wore a kilt.
unfortunately, in 1881, in the south side of Chicago, John's father was blinded due to a bar fight and passed away sometimes afterward. Nothing more is known about what happened to him, but this unfortunately left the young John Marston to be put in an orphanage, which is where John would spend the next few years of his life. He eventually ran away at an unknown date, opting to take his chances in the streets. It didn't go too well for him, with him taking his first life in 1894, with John claiming it was the man's fault.
First time I shot a man. His fault. But then we all think that all the time. I thought God himself would come down and take vengeance on me for what I had done, but...
Shortly after his first kill, in 1895, John was caught stealing by homesteaders in Illinois. The homesteaders were furious and pushed to have the young John Marston lynched, but Dutch Vanderlyn came in to save him. Dutch took John in and inducted him into the Vanderlyn gang, along whom he shared his membership with Hosea Matthews, Arthur Morgan, and Susan Grimshaw. John had a family-like relationship with the gang, with them being all he had at the time. Dutch felt like a father to him, teaching him how to hunt, read, and shoot. Dutch helped John to grow into an extremely experienced outlaw, and with the help of his newfound family, John would take part in dozens of raids, robberies, kidnapping, and murders all across the Wild West. He grew to become one of Dutch's right-hand man, with Arthur remarking he was Dutch's favorite, calling John a golden boy. By 1894, the Vanderlyn gang was at an all-time high, inducting new members to cause havoc across the Wild West, including Bill Williamson and Javier Escuela. Along with this new wave of members came a prostitute named Abigail Roberts, and despite having sexual relationships with several other members of the gang, she fell in love with John.
You know, gentlemen, this man here, oh, he married a whore. Used to ride with us. We all had her. Oh, but he married her.
And they had a son named Jack Marston in 1895. This new addition to John's life caused John to leave the gang in 1896 due to him being uncertain if it was truly his son and of the fears of raising a child and the responsibility it comes with. He returned a year later for unknown reasons. Maybe he was finally ready to take responsibility for Jack, maybe he missed Abigail, or maybe being out on his own was too much and he needed the gang's protection. It's unknown, but his return was met with much dismay from Arthur, dampening their relationship for the next few years. In 1898, after the gang reached the most members it would have in its lifetime, inducting members such as Charles Smith, Lenny Summers, and Micah Bell, they were settling in the growing town of Blackwater, doing their normal outlaw activity. Micah convinces Dutch to go after a ferry that went completely wrong when an innocent girl named Heidi McCord is killed, which causes the Pinkertons to ambush them. This sets in motion the events of Red Dead Redemption 2, when the robbery becomes a disaster and the gang is forced to retreat into the mountains. John is told to scout ahead and look for shelter, but unfortunately gets caught in the storm and attacked by wolves. He is later found the next day by Arthur and Javier, with scars donned over his face from the attack from the wolves. Throughout the early chapters of the game, John is seen helping with some raids throughout, but since the story primarily focuses on Arthur, he doesn't get too much screen time. This is mainly because Arthur is still mad at John for abandoning Jack, but over time, John grows as a person and works on becoming an actual father to Jack. This is seen in events such as when Jack is captured at the tail end of Chapter 3 and John does everything he can to get him back. This stronger family bond that John grows is much to the dismay of Dutch, who believes he is getting too close to his family and ignoring the rest of the gang.
Marston.
Dutch?
Oh, it's nice to see you happy.
Happy?
Playing at family is beautiful.
Why are you being strange with me?
Just remember, the gang comes first. We fight for each other. That's all I'm saying.
I don't really know what you're talking about.
No. I'm just being silly. Odd.
In turn, John becomes one of the first members to begin to question Dutch's ideals and his decisions.
You're quiet.
What are we still doing down here? Thought we was heading west.
We live free. You know that.
I don't need no noble savages speech again.
And have you forgotten that we came down here to get your son back? I look after my own. Can you believe this ingrate, Arthur?
Like he ain't gonna agree with you.
You always said he was too smart.
Don't forget who you are, John.
John is eventually captured at the end of Chapter 4 in the Saint Denis bank robbery by the Pinkertons and is put in jail. Dutch tells the gang that they would go get John later, but Arthur and Sadie Adler, a woman the gang saved at the beginning of the game, go against Dutch's orders and save him themselves. This infuriates Dutch, and it is later revealed by him that he wanted John to rot in prison, more than likely due to him questioning Dutch's ideas.
The Pinkertons know about the bank job in Saint Denis, John. You want to tell me that?
If you really think that, you are gone in the head.
This is why I told them to let you rot in jail.
From this point, Arthur and a lot of the other members of the gang begin to realize that Dutch has gone batshit insane, and Arthur, throughout the tail end of the game, begins to help John concoct a plan of escape from the gang so he can give his family a normal life. Eventually, as the gang goes for their last score that they need to escape, John is shot and Dutch leaves him to die. But by some miracle, he lives and returns back to the camp, right as Arthur, Dutch, Micah, and the rest of the gang are having their confrontation.
Dutch!
John?
You left me! Left me to die!
My boy, I didn't have a choice. John, I didn't have a choice.
Left me!
After the Pinkertons close in on the gang, John and Arthur make a run for it, with Arthur aiding John with returning John to his family. In the end, though, Arthur tells John to go on without him, so he can divert the attention from him and he can make it to his family. Before he leaves, he gives John his hat, bag, and journal to remember him by, and dies, saving the whole Marston family and giving them a chance at a normal life. Although, due to Arthur's death, John swore revenge on Micah Bell, the rat of the gang, and the man he believed killed Arthur. In 1907, the Marston family had to leave Roanoke Ridge due to John shooting a man in the head. At this time, the family is trying so hard to build a life of normality and eventually decide on ranching. For a while, they aid Mr. Geddes, the owner of Pronghorn Ranch, in hopes of one day buying their own ranch. Unfortunately, due to John getting caught up with killing members of the Hanging Dog Ranch, a competitor of Pronghorn, Abigail and Jack leave John until he stops falling into old habits. Over time, John works hard to make money to buy the ranch of Beecher's Hope, and with some help from his former employee, succeeds in getting a loan to buy the land. Eventually, John reunites with Uncle, the old bum of the gang, Charles Smith, and Sadie Adler. With their help, John is able to build a nice home and a barn for his family and gets money to pay off his loans by helping Sadie with bounties. Eventually, Jack and Abigail return to John after hearing from a letter of what he has built. They are happy to see John is really trying to leave his old life as an outlaw to provide for his family, and this joy even causes John to finally propose to Abigail. But of course, something always has to come in the way. Throughout the building of Beecher's Hope, Sadie has been catching wind on Micah Bell and eventually tracked him down to Mount Hagen. John chooses to go after Micah even though Abigail pleads him not to, worrying about him throwing away the life he built. But of course, John is more focused on avenging Arthur, claiming they wouldn't be here without him. So John, Charles, and Sadie all ride out to finally get revenge on Micah. Sadie and Charles both get injured in the assault, but John pushes forward and finds Micah, who has teamed up with Dutch and obtained the money from Blackwater. John pleads with Dutch to see sense while Micah taunts John and tells him to join them. Dutch eventually, out of nowhere, shoots Micah in the stomach, with John delivering the final blow. Dutch walks away and John is able to return to his family, marry Abigail, and finally live the life he worked so hard to build. But of course, the story doesn't have a happy ending. The year is 1911, and the American West is dying. New technological advances are pushing America towards the industrial age, including the creation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI for short. Edgar Ross, a former agent of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, is appointed head, and he, along with Agent Archer Fordham, are tasked with cleaning up the gangs that are ravaging the West, including gangs run by Bill Williamson and Dutch Vanderlyn. From the events of Mount Hagen, Ross is able to track down John Marston and captures his family, forcing him to go back into the West and hunt down his former family. This causes John to travel all over the West, even going into Mexican territories to hunt down and capture Bill, Javier, and Dutch. John is seen being frustrated that he has to once again revisit a life he wanted to leave behind, and despite having countless opportunities to abandon his family and run away, he complies to Ross's orders and captures all of his former family for the sake of his current family. Throughout the story, it is also revealed that John at one point had a daughter who died, but it is unknown what his daughter's name was, when she died, or how she died. John went through so many hoops for his family, showing how much he's changed and what his priorities are now. After capturing his former brothers in arms and being warned by Dutch that the government will find another monster and that their time has passed, implying that the government will come after him, John's family is released, overshadowing the warning Dutch vaguely gave. John and his family work on getting their ranch back to working order by getting new cattle. John also spends time with his son, teaching him skills that he didn't have the chance to. Unfortunately, this victory was very short-lived, since similar to Dutch's warning, the U.S. Marshals launch an attack on Beecher's Hope, killing Uncle in the crossfire. John realizes the only way to save his family is to hold them off on his own. He shares one final goodbye with his family and sacrifices himself to save the people he loved most, ending the tragedy of John Marston. John lived a short, depressing life that was filled with a lot of unavoidable hardships, and every victory he had was met with an even greater problem. In the end, though, John still did a lot of bad things and killed people that didn't really deserve it. But after seeing the error in his old ways, he grew up and started doing everything he could to protect his family, working to escape a life that is inescapable. He was born into a tragic life and died a tragic death, making his life one of the most depressing tragedies in gaming history. Thank you so much for making it this far into the video, and if you enjoyed, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps me make more content like this for you guys. It means a lot to me. But that's all I have for you today, so I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.